A fantastic world dominated by silence and soft lights ends there where the waves of the sea meet the dry land. There where the land comes to the surface begins another world made of sounds and colors where the man during millions of years dominates the scene. The life of human beings is strongly conditioned by the place in which they live. A remarkable difference exists between those who live their life near the coast or in the immediate closeness of the sea, and those who live in the hinterland, far from the maritime influences. No place can be like another. Some physical, anthropological and climatic characteristics could reveal a likeness between land far away from each other. But at the other side, there are places that do not resemble to any other, as the famous English writer Lawrence said in the beginning of the previous century after visiting Sardinia. I wish to describe some particular aspects of the life and death in central Sardinia, traditions of the past, prints of life still present today and strongly handed on to the new generation, although the fast changes and the influence of the modern diffuse globalisation. Sardinia is the largest island of the Mediterranean. It owns a wide coastal profile and a large international territory where the life of human beings changed during the centuries. Some characteristics like the mistrust, the goodness, the strong sense of hospitality, but also the jealousies between islanders stayed unchanged in time. The inside of the island introduces various places who are inaccessible through land. We fly over the coast of Flumendosa. We see above all the compactness of the vegetation. The sensation I have is the one observing an immense atmosphere, but instinctively I realize to be in Sardinia, that although it possesses wide forests in comparison to those of the Amazon in South America or the river basin in Congo in Africa, they are nearly non-existent for the reduced dimensions, but surely they are not less rich of fascination and suggestion for the beauty and the numerous shapes of life that they have. The highest top of the island, Point La Marmora, dominates the massif of Gennargentu. The mountainous chain, rounded off and sweet, can be observed from almost all the sides of the island in the day of northwest wind. A season is born and after a while it dies. The immutable pass of time enriched of acquaintance the human beings that during all their life love to discover, to devise and to learn. Life is unfortunately short and full of agony and does not reflect that what humanity wishes for each of us. Human beings do not accept death. The heart of every individual in normal circumstances wish to live, and if it possible, forever here on earth transformed in a beautiful park. Only the human beings have the ability to make plans for the future by using imagination in order to forecast. Some investigators assert that to be prepared for the winter or for the coupling, which is stimulated by hormones, the animals show a little tendency of the planning of time that exceeds sometimes by the minute. Characteristics such as intelligence, the language and the culture makes us, humans, different from any other life form. The combination of such components distinguished people one from another. Far away from the sea, in the heart of Sardinia, various countries rose up in the slopes of Gennargentu. They guard the memory of entire generations and perpetuate memories of a long time ago. Few kilometers distance one from the other, people have peculiar qualities that time could never cancel. Parents have passed their knowledge to their own children, which they learn from their own father and mother. Sadly, things are changing quickly. Today, many young people are not capable to understand messages transmitted to the people by a famous figure or symbol in town, the bell ringer. Mourning in the town of Miana Sardo was marked from the beating of that bell. A woman's death was announced with 5 beatings, that of a man with 7. The citizens, whichever activity they were carrying out, were informed of what was happened.
Dopo un tempo vuru, che in Campo Santo su in terra morta, ad antendi un lamento.
The pain for the loss of a beloved person often was expressed through a song called Satitu.
Ma mio resta con can come sere molta. Se o disprasia troppo de un meu vei rende conto. Non mi digan tuo amore, o ascoltami all'olore. Non si dovrà usare incontrare a esibire a se eternidadi.
They were exclusively women who sang this song about the beautiful qualities the decided had. But they sang as well the emptiness as the desperation for the loss that they felt. Some women in town were known with the name of Attitadoras, and usually they received a compensation for their work. If the decided one was murdered, the funerals complaint recitals were vicious words, a kind of revenge turned to the killer and its family. The neighbors supplied food to the family of mourning for many days. They cooked bread for all the family and warm meals. They offered solidarity and comfort. This custom is almost completely forgotten, but the feelings that motivated them were so strong that even today, despite selfishness and passing of time, people still use that custom to comfort in this way. The meal is ready. It will be served in a special basket, locally called corbula. They place the basket on their head and travels carefully to the house of the mourning. Today, unfortunately, the song for the dead and the funeral customs are almost disappeared in Sardinia. It still lives in the memory of very elderly person for which this tradition became part of their life and had a great importance. These eyewitnesses agreed that from 1940 life is totally changed. The era of 1900 was completely different than the ones before. The path of man has undertaken several diversions who have led him far away from a reasonable slow life that stayed unchanged for several millenniums. Although all the efforts, man has not been capable to resolve the great problem that plagued humanity. The problem is not the evolving of life, but the speed with which this is happening. The new generations are oriented towards those activities less traditional connected in prevalence to the modern times. They are less disposed to lead a life of sacrifice like their ancestors, which cultivated the grapevine and prepared their own wine, which mowed grain and processed it, so that the entire family could benefit of the precious products of the land. The alternative to handcrafted jobs and the studies is the emigration in order to work in the factories of North Italy and in the north of Europe. This is one of the reasons of depopulation of young people and the disappearing of agriculture activities as well. In Sardinia, to observe a young farrier at work represents a real rarity. Skillfully, he prepares the horse and its nails to receive the iron. Its abilities are obvious from the quiet of the animal, which appears at ease.
Poggiato.
The farrier uses a hot iron in order to boil the nail of the horse. This operation allows creating the precise center on the nail before the reviting, to avoid empty spaces in the inside and to guarantee better performances. Some arrangements are necessary to obtain a perfect assemblage between the iron and the hoof. To inlay furnitures is an ancient art that requires ability and fantasy. Some factories of the Italian peninsula carry out this activity to industrial levels. But here in the heart of Sardinia, in the shadow of Gennargentu, Franco inlays the furniture by using a hammer and several chisels with an arc tip. To inlay manually furniture requires much time, sometimes a few days. This fact will influence remarkably the final price, which will be in proportion to the job that has been carried out. The customer who wishes to have a piece of inlaid furniture can decide to acquire a product from the factory to a lower price or to obtain at a superior price an handmade piece. During the record, he manifests his regret. He put on evidence that young people prefer to emigrate rather than to learn a handcrafted trade. Great difficulties rise then in order to keep alive this ancient profession, which his father taught him.
Facendo questo lavoro, cercando di sfruttare sempre la materia prima, il castagno, perché qui siamo circondati da boschi e bisogna sfruttare questa materia. Ed è un castagno molto sano perché resiste a tutte le intemperie. E così sono rimasto sempre tranquillo a lavorare in questo paese, senza dovermi prendermi l'idea di andare ad emigrare. E quelli che sono partiti, anche altri miei amici che sono emigrati, oggi sono tornati che non sanno fare nessun tipo di mestiere.
To leave the land that saw him come to earth is one of the hardest situations that a man has to face. To be in a stranger place with climatic characteristics, social and cultural differences could be very traumatic for a lot of people. To be separated from the most affectionate beloved ones is very painful. Although later in their own life, as time passes by, they will always cultivate a desire to return into their native land. Some in Sardinia, in order of not to leave and abandon their own land, they are disposed to carry out laborious jobs such as to work the land or breed the livestock. In Sardinia, the sheep breeding works hard to conform to today's technological world. Many sheep pens offers their products to the local cheese producers industry. Others produces their products by their own. We are hosts in a sheep pen in Giara, situated 600 meters above sea level. From above this plateau, our look catches the mountains of Gennargentu. The shepherds milk the goats and observes their movements. To calm down the animals and to create a relaxed environment, he talks to them with short callbacks. The milking could appear a simple operation, but in reality it requires experience and ability. We grab the base of the nipple with the thumb and the index and give a light pressure with the fingers. This phase must be executed with great care in order not to traumatize the nipple and to avoid the stagnation of the milk in the breast. The remaining milk could be the reason that the gland of the breast starts to have an inflammation. In a considerable short time, thanks to the ability of the milker, the whole flock has offered his own milk, which is a tasteful nourishment that for its composition and goodness appears between the most important in the animal kingdom. This precious nourishment must be collected in large containers. It has to be filtered to avoid strange things like hairs, small bugs that can contaminate the milk. In this case, the milk will not be sold. The shepherd will keep it and use it to obtain cheese.
Questa è la cagliatura per fare il formaggio. È a posto.
Pour a small dose of rennet in a container. The so-called curdling has begun. This procedure transforms milk into cheese. The compost will have to rest 1 hour before that the shepherd can use it. Mix, to press, and to leave newly to rest are the conditions that favor the procedure. The curd is worked inside of an aluminium shape pierced in the inferior part in order to favor the outflow of the serum. To obtain a small form of tasteful goat, it's necessary to work several hours and to employ beyond 25 liters of milk. The modern cheese stores guarantees much hygiene and competitive prices. But it is sad when we think that the act of men's work by hand can disappear and be buried by technological progress within 10 years. It is of course emotional to observe the ancient activities of men. It would be right to go cells and keep this for the young people that are born in a world always more and more far away from the life of a long time ago.
Ok, questo è fatto.
At the slopes of Gennargentu, the graceful town of Tonara guards the ancient work of Sonaggiargios, manufacturers of Sonaggios. The artisans, constructors of cowbells, guard from hundreds of years the secret of their work. They respect the promise made to the ancestors to pass on the art, the suzono de suferu, the sound of iron, exclusively to their own children. In order to learn this trade, patience and passion and many years of exercise are necessary. The acquired experience will be obvious not only in the forge of the sturdy cowbells, but mostly in the turning that will allow obtaining single pieces from different tones. The amazing abilities of the Sonaggiargios is that one of the small metallic domes. Sometimes have a hard and clear sound, and in other times they are more melodic. In the past, the research of the best sound generated jealousy between the master blacksmith. Today, those feelings are living in the popular memories. Tonara is the only town of Sardinia that still produces and exports the cowbells in many Italian regions. Only 3 families carry on this laborious trade in their workshops. Whatever the shape or the dimension of the cowbell is, its construction demands very much attention. The minimal defect, even a small hole in the closing of the sheet, would produce an unaffected sound not audible in great distance, but it would render the turning practically impossible. The work begins when the design of the shape of the cowbell is placed on a metal sheet and its following cutting. The beating, the second phase, can only be executed after the metal has achieved the right temperature. The metal sheet begins to come into the choosing shape between the crack of the anvil and the beating of the hammer. Then we have the approaching phase, which permits to unite the joint of the cowbell until it is completely attached. After the welding, the clapper is applied, a little iron wing that will produce the sound. Then they proceed on the inside by bronzing it. The turning is obtained by beating the cowbell in the different parts, until the sound that they wished is obtained. The melody is different depending on the shape and the dimension of the cowbell, which placed as a collar on the animals, usually sheep, goats and cows, it will play a beautiful melody in the silence of nature. The Sardinian hinterland has been strongly cut short of the forests, in particular during the kingdom of Home Savoia. Camillo Benso, Count of Cavour, allowed the constructions of railways in Piedmont by using the wood of Sardinia. Although the disastrous disfigurement perpetrated, the island guard many woods. Some of them possess chestnut trees, which are one of the eldest of Italy. The territory to the east of Gennargentu, near Arezzo, is represented symbolically from the Hill of Textile, which is a natural monument that dominates the surrounding heaths. All around, we notice an environment that stayed intact, not troubled by modern world. In the summer, the chestnut trees shows delicate flowers of a clear color, replaced in the following months by bristly and strong curls of a green color. When the chestnut reach maturity, they receive thanks to the autumn warm shades, and between the velvet carves we catch a glimpse of round and tasteful fruit, the chestnuts. For many centuries and until the half of the year 900, the population of Gennargentu had one of the main elementary elements of their diet, the chestnut. Their collection, fascinating and delighted, was able to arouse enthusiasm in entire families that, faithful to old traditions, participate to this laborious work. The younger ones and even smaller children had a great interest in this phase of work, so much that the authorities, in the half of the year 800, obtained scholastic holidays from the summer to the autumn, exactly for the first day of September until the first day of November, so that all the boys in scholastic age could collaborate to the collection of the chestnut.
Bella, bellissima. La razza castagna, negoioso alliso e arrosto, nesi causu e tutto cierro papausu castagne strampara.
Proprio di Asia.
During the breaks, reunited around the fire and the roast chestnuts, they could rest and reinforce themselves with nourishing chestnuts.
Ha un po' di carne. Scalando nel rosso. Mi gusta.
The fruits were carefully laid down over a grill. Some were hanged in the vicinity of the roof so that they could be smoked, blackened for a few days, and after that they were collected and put into bags. They undergo the strampada, the beating with the feet on stones, to separate them from the covering wraps. Until the half of the year 900, dried chestnuts represented an essential good for the survival of many people, first of all because they were consumed with soup, rice or simply raw, and then because the proceeds of the sale of the castagneries, the itinerant retailer, permitted them to buy other essential goods. Today, although man travels to breathtaking rhythms of the modern world, in the mountains of Gennargentu, the human activities still show scenes of other times. The collected chestnuts that are in bags are transported from the wood into town on the back of mules, which are faithful and never tired. They have not been replaced by motorized means. In the small deposit, it's necessary to move the chestnuts every day so that they do not spoil. It is a laborious but necessary operation and allows fewer losses. In spite of all the efforts, a considerable amount of chestnuts will be eliminated. This is the life that today slides slow to the shadow of Gennargentu. Sardinia, although being a wide land, is still an island. Which directions we will take, we always reach the sea. Many people love the Sea of Sardinia. They define it as a gift of God, of Yahweh, this land with its ancient taste. To observe the sea and its rhythmic waves, it invites us to reflect on the fascinating work of man, and I think that in every place, peace and respect must reign. It is important to transmit to the youth the knowledge and the art of those persons that during all their life carry with passion their jobs, in the hope that someone will born and is disposed to guard the job, the memory and the culture for themselves, as well for those who live in the mountains in the heart of Sardinia, far away from the sea.